Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, along with my co-host, Stacy Raine.
Bill, are you a good swimmer?
In a word, no.
I'm a relatively decent swimmer, but, as a kid, I nearly drowned. So today we have a cause that's we're going to talk about that's super close to my heart. We're going to learn how to be super safe in the water and meet someone who's dedicated his life to this cause.
Today we'd like you to meet Bobby Hazen, one of the founding members of the New York Water Safety Coalition and executive founder of End Drowning Now. Bobby has been in the swim school and water safety industry for over 26 years. Bobby, thanks for taking a break from the pool and coming to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you so much for having us and being able to discuss this very, very important subject.
Bobby, at what point in life did you dedicate yourself to water safety, and is there a personal connection that you have with it?
I've been in the like I said, the swim school industry and the water safety industry now for 26 years, and I just found it interesting as I used to work for Safety Swim schools here on Long Island. And every year where there was a non-fatal or a near drowning or a drowning incident, our phones would ring off of the hook like crazy. So I said to the owner at the time, I was like, why are they calling us after the fact instead of before? And he said, that's a good question. Why don't we find out what's going on? So as I started to do the research, there was just a lot. You could tell that there wasn't a good information out there that people could go to find out, hey, what tips and steps and layers of protection are out there to protect parents and caregivers to the dangers of being safer in and around the water.
And were you ever a lifeguard? I'm just wondering because you have that physical, strong appearance.
Yeah, I actually have been a lifeguard for quite a few years, and then obviously now been in the industry for 26 years. But I never was a competitive swimmer. I just, started working for the swim school industry and loved it. And I still teach to this day and just love that, being able to give a skill of a life-saving skill, and that stays with these kids for the rest of their life.
What's the saying? If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
That's right.
We all know water safety is important, and I think most parents know, that water safety is important. But what do parents need to really understand about being safe in the water?
I think what they need to really understand is that this is a danger. According to the CDC, it is the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4. And you'll be amazed at how many people do not know that. And we're in the United States of America. And for that to be a serious problem is baffling to me.
Right.
So we need to educate everybody as quickly as we possibly can on what the steps they can do to keep their kids safer around water.
I just raised my hand. Our audience can't see that. But when you said that, I didn't know that. I think I would have taken car safety or something like that, crossing the street or I don't know what the most popular wrong answer is, but I would have it. I'm always on the wrong side. So, yeah. And you were telling us before the show, just so our audience knows too, somewhat simple things like for a young child, a bucket of water can be deadly, or a bathtub with a little water in it, or a small pond, or a collection of water in the backyard might not even qualify as a pond, but a child could die because they have a different weight to their head, et cetera, et cetera. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a child, an infant, a toddler can drown as little as 2 inches of water. So you have to remember in the summer to empty the buckets and the cans that are outside, and any the quick setup pools or anything that you're using that's going to collect rainwater even as a danger, and absolutely bathtubs. There's an alarming number of children that die in bathtubs because parents think they're okay. They prop them up. They go to the laundry, or they go to the sink and they put dishes away, and then they come back, and obviously there's a tragedy. So they need to learn that bathtubs can be a danger as well.
Now, what's Water Safety Coalition? It would seem like it would obviously tie in with drowning, but why are they different? Well, what's different about them?
Well, we actually founded the New York State Water Safety Coalition back in 2020 during COVID. And the United States Swim School Association, which we're all members of, and a bunch of swim school owners in New York State needed to figure out how could we make swim lessons essential with all the COVID restrictions. The National Institute of Health has deemed swimming lessons formal swim lessons to help reduce the risk of drowning by up to 88%.
Wow.
So we couldn't understand why liquor stores and various other things were allowed to be open, but swim schools were not, as a life-saving skill. So we formed this coalition for that reason.
And I know as a parent, I mean, just having that backyard pool was a big thing during that time, just giving kids something to do, right?
Yeah, there was actually more pools installed during COVID than there has been at any time across the country because of people who were home and they needed something to do and they had a little extra money because of the grants and the things that came forward from COVID. So a lot of pools were installed and creates more dangers. And,
right.
And that's why we needed to have this coalition formed. And then we saw that there was opportunity while we were up in Albany working on the legislation to make it essential that, hey, you know what, we need to get these legislators and the congressmen and congresswomen to understand how important this is, and that's why we continued our focus on the state and trying to make water safer across the state.
I want to get to some of the really important statistics that I was reading on your website, but first, I really want to come back to these buckets. And you and I talked about this a little bit before the show. I always thought as a parent, this was something that confused me as a parent, and I feel like I'm fairly informed on water safety because of my experience as a child. But I always wondered, like, how do kids drown in just a few inches of water? And you were telling me it's not necessarily that they hit their head. It's that they just don't know what to do, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about before, a little bit of it has to do with the weight differential in their head, especially as infants. Their head is much larger than the rest of their body, so they're front heavy. Yeah. So if they do fall face forward, they can't pick their head back up. But a lot of it just has to do they're not aware of what to do or haven't been trained on what to do.
Right.
And starting swimming lessons at a younger age gives them that skill and lets them learn that, hey, all you need to do is turn or roll over or get up.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, they just don't understand that that's something that they could do.
Yeah. You would think that would be a natural thing, but it's actually not. I mean, like I told you, I remember as I was drowning thinking very calmly, I'm not really sure how to get to the top of that water. And I didn't do anything because I didn't know what to do. And it's scary as a parent to think about that.
Well, drowning is silent. It's not like you see on TV and in the movies. What happens is, and this happens to adults too. I mean, you go in and if you're not prepared for it or don't know instinctively how to react, you're going to take a bunch of water into your lungs. And now you have more or less asphyxiated yourself and you can't make a sound. You can't scream. You can't yell. You can't do those things. And now your body has become not buoyant anymore because there's water in your lungs, and you start to sink, and you can't do anything. So that's why the water safety tips are really important on learning how to swim, being able to save yourself, get your head above water, be able to float on your back, be able to tread water, and recognize the different ways that you could get back to safety based on that information. We start as young as 1. We recommend as early as 1. The American Academy of Pediatrics changed its stance a few years ago, back in 2019. To include from 1 and up to start swimming lessons. But there's baby programs and there's, group classes that you can get into that the parents can be with the children and acclimate them to water that you could recommend as young as 2 or 3 months old. So, really need to start at a younger age to really make progress and not wait till they're 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you mentioned, what was your expression? Drowning is silent?
Yes.
I think that's a great combination of 3 words, because what do we think of with little kids? The slightest, if they trip and they get a boo-boo, they scream out loud. It's like death, and you come over and you can barely see it, but then they want a lollipop and they get a little pat on the back for about 10 minutes. But drowning is, as you said, silent. We're not going to know that. They can walk outside and in 5 seconds, if they got the same bruise, the whole neighborhood would know it.
Yep.
But because of the drowning, because it's so quiet, and you shocked me with those statistics of 2 inches of water or a bucket of water that could be just sitting out there. And most of us don't know it. It could be rainwater just sitting there. Kid is interested in it. They look into it, and either they fall or get in some position where they can't help themselves. And if I'm hearing correctly, that's one of the big parts of the problem.
Yeah, and it just goes around education. The whole purpose of what we're doing here with Stop Drowning Now and End Drowning Now and the New York State Water Safety Coalition is to educate the community and parents and caregivers of the different dangers that are out there, how to be safer in and around water, and all the layers of protection that you need to have in place to protect your children around the water.
Yeah, one of the things I read on your website is that someone can drown in as little as 30 seconds, and so and a lot of times parents think they're watching, but they might be distracted. They don't realize how fast it can happen.
Yeah, and if you listen to the stories and you hear the horror stories every year, you'll hear that common statement. I didn't know. I didn't hear it. I mean, it happened so quick, and that's because they're not able to make that sound, and they get out and they fall in, and nobody knows what happened. And it happens at parties. That's why we recommend water watchers when you're having a group party or you're having a pool party this summer, making sure that you have somebody that's designated to watch the water, an adult that's not drinking, that's not, that's their only focus. And you could share that responsibility, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But you have somebody that's always watching the water because it can happen that quick.
Right. They're not on their phone. They're not doing anything else but watching.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take a minute to remind our listeners that you are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Stacy Raine, here with Bill Horan, and today we're talking with Bobby Hazen, one of the founding members of the New York Water Safety Coalition and the executive founder of End Drowning Now. Bobby has been in the swim school and water safety industry for over 26 years.
Bobby, I love that term, and I'm writing all over my sheet, as you can see it, water watches. And I think that's great. So if someone's having a little party, maybe for 10 minutes it's grandma, the next 10 minutes it's dad, the next 10 minutes it's neighbor Sally, and someone is just watching that water and not taking a bathroom break or a TV ball game break or something, and making sure that no one trips because, as you said, it's silent. We're not going to hear them. We're not going to be alerted to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you need somebody that's watching the water, scanning, and just being aware of what's going on. You hear these stories as somebody, they're having a barbecue, they're cooking, there's a lot of activity going on. You have a younger kid that's in the water and maybe is staying in the shallow end, but all of a sudden kind of drifts into the deeper end with their older brother or sister or the other kids, and nobody knows what happened because you don't have that focal point person really paying attention to that specifics, so the water watcher really kind of resolves that problem by making sure that they're focused on nothing but water, watching the water and keeping all the kids safe.
And somehow when you put a cool name to it, like I'm a water watcher, I feel good. Even though it's a grandparent, I'm still a water watcher. So from 1 to 1:15, I'm watching the water and guarding the pool, and then after that I can go watch the ball game or take the dog for a walk or whatever else, and then somebody else becomes the water watcher for a few minutes. So I think that's a great idea, and it's not asking too much of anybody just to give up a few minutes rather than
it's actually kind of a cool thing. If you had a party and you handed somebody to come in, you hand them, we have tags on the Stop Drowning Now website where you can actually get, water watcher tags and they, you hand them out and, hey, you 15 minutes and then I want you to pass it on to them and I want to make a little game out of it. Yeah. And everybody's now stays involved and it makes sense.
This is a sharp group. I think they're really onto things.
Right, because a lot of times everyone feels like, everyone's watching. And really, when that happens, no one's watching, Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, you've heard stories. I don't know if you all know Stu Leonard from, Stu Leonard's, grocery stores. He lost his son 36 or 38 years ago. They were down on a vacation. Same thing, So it's really, really important that we have somebody watching the water and making sure that there's no dangers there.
Right. So you guys have been really busy with the New York Water Safety Coalition and your lobby group, State and Broadway. So tell us about some of the things that you're doing.
Well, we obviously, after we got the swimming lessons deemed essential, we kind of decided, hey, there's opportunity here to really bring awareness to the legislators. We were shocked at how many people weren't aware that it's the number one killer of children ages 1 to 4. And there was always somebody similar to Sally, like you told your story. They all have a story or knew somebody that was affected by drowning or a non-fatal drowning event or something along those lines. So we looked into legislators and found out, hey, there's opportunity here. What can we do to help educate? And one of the things that we talked about was developing a video in the hospitals where a new parent that has a child must watch a drowning prevention water safety video.
Wow. And
Governor Hochul took credence to it and looked at it and has signed it into law. It's Chapter 588. And that goes into effect as soon as the video is done. Department of Health is working on that right now, so that will be in effect at some point this coming year.
Congratulations on that. That's a big win.
Bobby, I have to ask you, because I'm just so impressed sitting here, and we have a lot of really wonderful guests. Every week, Stacy and I say we're learning so much from the guests we have on, but that someone is coming up with these ideas and passing them on to the legislators, et cetera. And don't be modest if it's you, but is it you, or do you have a doctor or a priest or a teacher who is coming out with all this, or a lifetime lifeguard who just sees the worst that happens. Who gets these ideas? Because they're great.
It's a group effort from the members of the New York Water Safety Coalition. You know, some of us are swim school owners, some of us are involved with the aquatics industry, lifeguards, the United States Swim School Association, and we just are looking at, hey, how can we educate the community and make change? You know, because it's not changing. If you look at the statistics in the last 10 years, I mean, I wrote some of the numbers down here. I mean, you know, in the last 10 years, 2,920 children ages 1 to 4 have drowned.
Wow.
1,667 ages 5 to 12. 2,269 teenagers. And then 14,000 adults, all just in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And that's not all in New York. That's across the country. Mm-hmm. But New York is one of the top 5 states that have had, unfortunate drownings in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So, and it's not changing. The statistics keep staying the same. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they come down, but there's not making a dramatic difference like you see with bike helmets and car seats and sun safety. You know, and one of the things that we're working on in New York State is to have the state bill amendment to Bill 207, which is the state health code, that talks about all the dangers and has PSAs for all the other dangers that are involved out there for children and people, and risks to dying. But they don't have anything for drowning.
Yeah.
You know, so we're working with the state and possibly having an amendment to that bill that includes PSAs on water safety and drowning prevention.
And again, like you said before, and I keep thinking of that word, is it the silent killer, or what was the expression?
Drowning is silent.
Drowning is silent. You know, if someone is taking drugs, you kind of see a bad situation coming, or if they're doing something else, something dangerous that might put them at risk, you see that coming, or you can at least warn them. They could walk outside and there's a puddle, or they could be near the water, and what do? You look the other way, or you're with a group, and before you know it, in less than 2 minutes, life is over. So what you're doing, obviously, is so important. Do you yourself get up there to Albany and make this presentation, or do you have people who do that for you?
Yeah, the members of there's a core group of the members of the New York Water Safety Coalition. We go up. We're going to be up there at some point again this year, working on these important bills. And we're very excited about, obviously, the bill that's just been passed from Governor Hochul, where the video will be in the hospitals. So we're just working on, people need to understand the layers of protection. 8 out of 10 drownings happen in the backyard, because people don't have locks on their doors or chimes on their doors, or they don't have isolation fencing around the pool. Isolation fencing should have self-closing, self-latching gates, not just fencing around the yard, fencing around the pool also. So if a kid does get out the back slider, that they can't get into the pool, unaware. So those are really, really important things.
Water's fun, and kids are attracted to it because they have so much fun in the water when they're with a parent and all this stuff, and they think, well, I can just get in. That's not necessarily the case. It seems like a no-brainer for some of these things to be passed when it's the number one killer of children, ages 1 to 4.
Yeah, it's got to be part of our culture. I mean, if you look at Australia, look at Germany, this is part of their culture. Swimming and swim lessons and water safety education are part of their culture from the day that they're born.
Yeah.
And we need that kind of activity. We need that kind of change to happen to do anything about these statistics. I mean, 80% of these drownings are boys and men. And black children and black teenagers are 1 to 2 to 3 times more at risk.
Really?
For this I almost call it an epidemic, because it really is. I mean, the amount of people that die every year, it's 11 people a day, 4,000 people a year. I mean, it's crazy. It is an epidemic. It's an own way. So we have to make some dramatic change that's gonna work.
And a big thing for you is to get the word out, right? How else are you working to get the word out?
Yeah, we're trying to do as many things that we possibly can as far as educating the community. There's people trying to get involved with pediatricians, and how can they, during the 18-month visit, how can they, educate families and maybe give out a pamphlet about water safety tips and swim lessons, and the parents then make their own informed decision on what to do and how to do it. With the Stop Drowning Now and End Drowning Now program, we have the Respect the Water Assembly, and we have a curriculum that goes into the schools, and they have a 1 to 3 day smart board activity, and they work on drowning prevention tips and water safety tips, and understanding, hey, what's the one thing that somebody can learn? Maybe you teach a kid one thing, and they take that one thing instead of 5 things or 6 things. And one thing is really important would be, hey, never go near the water without a grown-up or an adult. You know, we teach kids to hold their hand when they're walking in a parking lot or across the street. Why can't we teach kids not to go near the water without a grown-up or an adult?
Yeah, that's definitely something
along those lines.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've told my kids. I am going to take a minute to remind our listeners that you are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Stacy Raine, here with Bill Horan, and today we're talking with Bobby Hazen, one of the founding members of the New York Water Safety Coalition and executive founder of End Drowning Now. Bobby has been in the swim school and water safety industry for over 26 years.
I'll tell you one thing that impressed me and that you pointed out. I would have always thought those little, I'm going to call them kiddie pools, you know, they're probably 6 inches to a foot, and maybe they're, I'm going to say 6 or 8 feet in diameter. They're like nothing. It's almost like a coffee cup. They're so small. And I always thought I wouldn't even worry about those. When I think of a pool, I think of the 3 or 4 foot pool or the in-ground pool.
Right.
But now you've taught me even a bucket of water, or
a backyard pond.
Backyard pond, obviously. But even these little pools could be dangerous. And all we have to do is really turn them over and empty them out at night. And you can fill them up the next morning. It takes, 5 minutes maybe with a hose. Yeah. But at least that's one lesson you got through to me. And I'm going to pass on to people. And
yeah, I've definitely been guilty of leaving the kiddie pool with a few inches of water in it thinking, they'll just get right up. But that doesn't necessarily happen. And that's kind of a shocking thing to learn.
Yeah, and that's part of the education, right? You know, most parents and caregivers don't necessarily think that, you know. So that's what we're trying to do is give as much information as we can. You know, like if you have an in-ground pool, semi-in-ground pool, what are you doing with the ladder, you know, at night? Is it locking? Is it being lifted up and locking? Are you removing the ladder? Are you making that inaccessible to a child in any way, shape, or form? So that's part of the layers of protection that we're trying to teach.
Who's your best source for information? Does it come from the doctors, the nurses, the teachers? The phys ed teachers, lifeguards? Is there like a prime source that you get the word out other than yourself?
We're trying to do as much as we can. We talked about with the pediatricians, maybe getting out into schools and doing the assembly. The Respect the Water has an amazing 20-minute assembly. They go out and they educate kids about water safety, and the kids have fun, and it's interactive. They take information home. We talked about the Stop Drowning Now curriculum and using the smart boards 1 to 3 days, or a water safety activity that gets hung up in the hallway during every May is National Water Safety Awareness Month. You know, doing those kinds of things. Can we get the pool companies to hand out information when they open pools about water safety tips and those kinds of things? You know, can we get Parks and Recreation to get involved in giving those tips at the beach, and always swim in front of a lifeguard. Be aware of rip currents and how dangerous those can be, because obviously that's a huge thing, especially on Long Island. Right. So anything that we can do, and any other organizations that want to partner with us to make that process happen.
Yeah. So how can other organizations or even just, your average citizen get involved?
They can hop on to the New York Water Safety Coalition, website, nywsc.org, and obviously get tips from there, get water safety tips from there. If they want to get involved and partner with us, that's available there. And if they want to donate to the cause, because obviously this costs money, and we're trying to get up to Albany and make as much change as we possibly can, and work with State and Broadway to make those processes and those changes happen.
Yeah, maybe even sharing some of your tips on social media might help too.
Yep.
Just getting more people to see these things cross their path,
Yeah, I mean, even if they take some of the information and they post and they share it and they tag New York State Water Safety Coalition, they tag us, and they tag Stop Drowning Now. The more that we have that kind of sharing and that activity going on, you're going to get more people to know what's going on.
Well, we at least notified about 1.5 million people today with this show, so we'll get the word out to them. Now, you have another group, if I'm correct, called Splash. And what is that, and how does that work with the first?
It's not actually a group; it's actually an acronym.
Yeah.
That we use at our water safety school shows, and it's become kind of national, and it's a lot of fun. And it basically uses the word splash, and you have a little take on each letter. Okay. And S is for safety fencing, proper isolation fencing, self-closing, self-latching gates. P is for put away toys, put up ladder if you have that semi-in-ground or above-ground pool. L for life jackets. I mean, I can't tell you how many people do not wear life jackets when they're on the boat. Paddleboard, kayak, canoe, have to wear a life jacket. A, adults always watching. We talked about that and how important proper supervision is. S, swim lessons. We talked about 88% reduction in drowning if you take formal swimming lessons. It's that important. And H is how to help. learn rescue skills, and absolutely anybody who's a water watcher or anybody that has children should learn CPR.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a great point, because I'm thinking of all the pre-things we can do, but if something happens, what would be the reaction that the parent should have? Should they call 911, or can they give the CPR? Or what's, because I think we would panic. You can hear me stuttering as I'm saying this. If something bad happens or negative, what's the first thing the parent or the guardian should do?
Well, they got to be aware of the dangers first off, and know how to react, and you know what safety procedures are in place. You know, yes, call 911, activate the emergency services, but you should know how to do CPR. You know, and obviously any child or anybody that's going into the water is going to need rescue breaths first, and then CPR second. And you know, hopefully that does the trick. But the most important thing is not allowing it to get into that situation in the first place. And how do we do that? The layers of protection. You know, teaching a kid how to save themselves and float on their back, and not to go near water without an adult, and adults not to ever, you know, never swim alone. You know, you hear these adults that pass away. 90% of them are swimming by themselves instead of having somebody watch them just in case something happens.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have never thought about that.
Or they're going in the ocean with not in front of a lifeguard, out in the Rockaways and those kinds of things. You know, they have to be aware that that's probably not the smartest thing to do. That lifeguards are there for a reason.
And I heard the number 90%, 9 out of 10. If you're swimming alone, you're putting yourself in danger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we all think, we know how to swim, but we maybe don't know how to get ourselves out of situations that, you know, swimming might bring us to, right?
Yeah, different elements. You know, obviously the ocean is a completely different element than a pool would be. You know, I mean, rip currents and those kinds of things, and obviously just ocean currents in general. So you got to be aware of your surroundings. You know, if you're on a canoe trip and, you know, you're in a river, you know, what's that look like? Do people know where you are? What are you doing? Those kinds of things.
And wear your life jacket, right?
Wear your life jacket, absolutely.
And people think, I'm just in a canoe and I can swim, but you just never know what's going to happen outside of just getting in the water, right?
Yeah. And think about it from a parent's perspective. You know, kids do what their parents do.
Yeah.
So if parents choose not to wear a life jacket in front of their 5 or 6 year old child when they're on a boat this summer, you know, they're sending a bad message, because that kid is going to learn what their parents are doing. So even though it may not be comfortable, it may not look cool, think about what you're teaching your child and how important a life jacket actually is.
Bobby, this has been amazing. I've learned so much today, and I want to be a water watcher. Now that's my goal. So I'm going to tell my daughter about that next time I'm at her house with her 6-year-old son. I'd like our audience to know our guest today has been Bobby Hazen, Hazen. He's one of the founding members of the New York Water Safety Coalition and executive founder of End Drowning Now. Bobby, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for covering this very, very important subject, and let's hope that all of us together can stop drowning now.
We hope we never need you again, because there's no more drowning. I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Stacy Raine. We thank you for listening to this week's episode of My Hometown.
We like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.